Fortunate it was that whatever plagued the ship did not plague the escape pods. For although they made it out of the ship alive, the rest of the ship would come behind them. The first thing Sarge did was pick up his rifle. First thing Jane did was cut down a tree. The first thing the doctor did was pick berries. Didn't realize that they were only raspberries at the time. It would later become a great source of food in this time of trouble. Large amount of hair leather came down in a cargo pod. But would the colonists be able to benefit from it at all? Doctor cared not. He was, however, interested in the contents of the next pod. Very much interested him. As luck would have it, there was hair leather there to be found as well. Sarge and Jane began to realize that this was a futile effort, and decided to take what they could and run. Puddles of fuel on the ground made things difficult. Doctor told them to get the sparkliest-looking medicines first, as those were the most valuable of them all. He wouldn't bring himself to carry things like a plebeian. That was for his comrades. His comrades, which seemed to have fallen down from the sky in a decidedly undignified way, inevitably resulting in the death of a pop idol, an empath, a paramedic, fortunate that, and a barkeeper. Oh, the tragedy. But who is this? A professional builder by the name of Macy. Though it is arguable as to whether or not she deserved to die by virtue of her name alone, Doctor decided to designate a sort of triage. Psychopath or no, he may be a healer yet, maybe a hero yet. just in case one of their precious pets should have something unfortunate happen to them. Heavens, that was a narrow miss, Sarge said, as he was nearly exterminated by a series of cryptosleep modules that rained down from him from on high. Perhaps he could rescue this person, a lieutenant, his old lieutenant from the army. This entrepreneur very nobly decided to go not fight the fire, since she was bleeding from practically every area on her body, instead making her way to the triage at the urge of the android lady. Battery module fell. Perhaps it would be best if they were reduced to their component parts rather than exploding. Doctor thought to perhaps utilize the medicine that he had brought with him. But after all, who better than himself to spend it on? Another container fell, this time full of trade goods. Delicious turkey, a rather nice pump shotgun, which Doctor decided would be his. Macy thought feebly to help extinguish the blaze. The fool. There was indeed some rather good things that fell. Doctor called for Sarge to come pick up some of this stuff. Forget about all the monkey hide that was falling from the sky, as though the heaven was full of simians all of a sudden. So he did. Jane was torn between fighting an ever-growing blaze and finishing the task of deconstructing batteries which would soon explode. Perhaps on her way back she could rescue someone who... No, there's really no one to rescue, except for Beard. And he's going to bed. Sarge very nearly threw his life away fighting the blaze, but decided instead that it would be better for all those concerned if he didn't. and instead would procure for himself a nice, albeit poor, fox jacket. Jane, on the other hand, decided to emulate Sarge, at least in the foolish way. Perhaps she could be of better use, securing the area near the triage, Doctor suggested. And the lieutenant, despite his semi-catastrophic wounds, had to be ordered back to bed. Then the ship's engines crashed and spread ever-growing fire as they destroyed themselves over and over and over, leaking fuel everywhere. Poor dears. Life would never be the same for them. How ironic that a medicine container should crash so close to the triage and be full of things that perhaps weren't necessarily medicine per se, so much as peculiar and cutting-edge cybernetics. Sarge, pick up some of those things, damn you! Doctor shouted. Sarge decided perhaps this area was not worth fighting for so much anymore. It may be better if perhaps they were to store their things inside of this small marble structure. Doctor thought perhaps to better treat some of his patients, but maybe he wouldn't. Maybe he would just use whatever scraps were on hand. What a prodigious amount of food that would soon burn to bits. Ship's nutrient dispenser dispensed it improperly on top of a herd of deer. The irony of food making more food. Oh, perhaps they could still salvage some of this. Macy, well enough, got up in her disheveled state and decided she would attempt to prioritize claiming some of that nutrient paste nasty stuff it was. One might not realize it, but there is something of a keen market for the fur and skins of domesticated animals on certain planets. Apparently, this was one of them. Coley, feeling remarkably better now, got up and attempted to assist fighting the blaze. Sarge decided maybe he could help. Could he? Best he doesn't. Really. But Jane might. Or so she'd try. If they weren't careful, they would be completely encircled by flames. As it were, the majority of the landing site had been burned up. Perhaps they could make for themselves a small cubby here, where the fire had already burned away some of the grass and bodies. Finally, as good as he could get for now, the lieutenant stood and attempted to fight the blaze with no small degree of admirable fortitude. Jane set about to hauling things away from the blaze, leaving the rest of tending to Mr. Beard, the joy wirer, to those who are better at it. Sarge decided he'd had quite enough of this, and summarily abandoned the fight against the fire to consume his beer. He was irritated, you understand, because it was getting lukewarm. He felt remarkably better afterwards. Macy was feeling terrible, dreadfully hungry. And then, salvation from the heavens. It began to rain. Bit by bit, the blaze simply washed away. Quite fortunate from the ostrich, who was dozing, blissfully ignorant, mere feet from fiery doom. Majority of them all fell into a somewhat disturbed sleep amidst a pool of engine fuel, blood, vomit, and rain. first day had seen them through. To a new beginning, at least. And not yet end upon end. But what would the next day bring?